Clint Eastwood, Hollywood's last outlaw, walks onto the Jimmy Kimmel stage to promote his new film. But what begins as a standard interview quickly devolves into a fiery clash that ends with Clint being thrown out of the studio. How did a simple talk show appearance spiral into chaos? The Jimmy Kimmel Live studio is buzzing. Lights beam down, the audience hums with anticipation. Clint Eastwood, well into his 90s, is the main attraction. His very presence silences the roomies there to discuss his latest project, stark drama about a rancher battling a corporate land grab. It's a story that echoes his own stubborn principles. The squint, the gravel in his voice, they're still sharp, but Clint, no fan of the late-night game, the scripted bits, the forced laughs. He's here for one reason only, to talk about the film. Anything else, he's not entertaining. Backstage, tension is already building. Clint's longtime assistant Maggie, all business and sharp instincts, warned the producers in no uncertain terms, don't turn him into a circus act. They nodded, but their eyes gave them away. They wanted a moment, something viral, something to milk from Clint's legacy. Maybe get him to wear a silly hat, crack a joke at his own expense. Maggie knew better. Clint doesn't play those games, not for studios, not for anyone. Her warning would go unheeded on. They'd regret it. In the green room, Clint sits with a black coffee, watching a monitor as Kimmel opens the show. Jimmy is in his usual rhythm, roasting celebrities, getting easy laughs from the crowd. Clint doesn't react, just taps his fingers lightly on the armrest. Maggie notices. It's the same focus she's seen 100 times the calm before the draw. They're gonna try something, she mutters to a nearby crew member. He shrugs, clueless. A stage manager waves him forward. Clint stands, smooths his jacket, and walks to the curtain. No entourage, no smile, just him. Kimmel's mid-bit about a pop star meltdown when he pivots. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth Clint Eastwood. The band hits a gritty chord. The audience explodes. Clint walks out slow, deliberate, like he owns the room. He shakes Kimmel's hand. Short ferment takes his seat. The cheers die down. The tension settles in. Jimmy opens safe, asking about the film. Clint talks about loyalty, standing your ground, the kind of fights worth taking on. His voice is worn but unwavering. Every word hits like a nail. The crowd hangs on it. For a moment, it's working. But Jimmy's looking for levity, something to lighten the mood. He tosses a joke about Clint's cowboy days, asks if he still rides horses. Clint responds flatly, when it matters. The crowd chuckles, but there's steel in his voice. A warning. Jimmy doesn't hear it. Trying to recover the vibe, Jimmy pulls out an old story, something about a bar fight during a Western shoot. He's fishing for laughs. Clint's jaw tightens. Didn't happen, he says. The words cut the air clean. The room reacts, a ripple of gasps, some awkward laughs. Jimmy smiles, trying to salvage it, but he's misread everything. He grabs a cowboy hat from under the desk, cheap, oversized, holds it up like a joke. Come on, Clint, one shot for the fans, he says, waving it. The audience claps, encouraging it. Clint doesn't budge, he stares. Hard put that away, Clint says, quiet but lethal. Each word lands with finality. The room freezes. Jimmy's smile falters. Maggie watches from the wings, lips pressed tight. She knew this was coming. The air turns heavy. A thick, awkward silence takes hold. It's the kind that sucks all the oxygen from the room. Still holding the cowboy hat, Jimmy lets out a weak chuckle. But it's hollow, forced, and it's already too late. All right, all right. No hats tonight, Jimmy says, tossing it onto the desk. But the crowd doesn't laugh. It's uneasy now, their earlier cheers reduced to a low murmur. Clint Eastwood hasn't moved, his eyes locked on Jimmy, unblinking like he's staring down a rattlesnake. The tension in the room is thick, the kind that crawls up your spine and makes your skin prickle. Backstage, Maggie's fists are clenched. She leans toward the stage manager and hisses, "Told you not to push him." The stage manager, now sweating, signals to the control booth to cut to commercial. But the director hesitates. They want the drama, and they're getting it. Jimmy, sensing he's losing control, shifts in his chair, trying to steer things back. "So let's talk more about the film," he says, voice a bit too cheerful, straining to reset the room. He asks about the inspiration behind the ranchers. Story hoping to guide the conversation back to safer ground. Clint leans forward, elbows on his knees, and begins to speak. But it's not the light-hearted answer Jimmy expects. Clint talks about people who don't roll over. People who fight back when the world tries to take what's theirs. It's not about playing dress-up for laughs, he says, and the line lands hard. The audience picks up on the jab. A few gasp, some clap. Jimmy's smile tightens. He taps the desk nervously. He tries to push forward, asking about the film's production, but Clint isn't done. He interrupts, more forceful now. "You know, I came here to talk about something real," he says, his eyes scanning the studio, the audience, the blinding lights. "Not to be some sideshow for your ratings." The crowd stirs again, some cheer. Others whisper, unsure if this is still part of the act. Jimmy's caught off guard, his usual charm faltering. He glances toward his floor producer, who's signaling to wrap it up, but Clint's not backing down. "I've been in this game longer than you've been alive," Clint says, voice even, but laced with fire. "I don't need to play your games to sell a story." The audience is split half, erupting in support, others heckling, thinking it's all theater. Jimmy, trying to regain control, leans forward with a smile that doesn't touch his eyes. "Hey, we're just having fun here, Clint. No need to get heated." The words fall flat. Jimmy pivots again, this time complimenting Clint's directing, hoping to calm him down with flattery. But Clint stares at him, unmoved. "Fun," he says, and the word drips with contempt. "You call this fun? Parading people out here too. Make them look like fools." He gestures around him, the bright lights, the cameras, the set. This whole circus. The crowd reacts, buzzing again, louder now. The energy's raw, unpredictable. Backstage, the producers are scrambling, the directors barking orders. One executive wants to cut to break. Another says, "Let it ride." The ratings are climbing fast. Maggie's pacing, muttering to herself, knew this would happen. She catches a glimpse of Clint on the monitor, stone-faced. She knows he's not letting this go. On stage, Jimmy's scrambling. His jokes are flopping, his rhythm shattered. Desperate, he tries to switch gears. "What was your favorite role?" "From the old days," he asks, smiling like nothing's wrong. But Clint shuts it down again. "You don't get it," he says, voice raised just enough to carry. "This isn't about me. It's about respect for the work, for the people watching." The crowd explodes. Some stand and cheer, others boo. The room is a powder keg. Jimmy's had enough. He drops the act. His tone shifts sharper, impatient. "Look, Clint, we're just trying to give the fans what they want," he says, gesturing to the audience. "They love you. They want to see the legend. It's a mistake." Clint leans in, his eyes locked. "They don't want a clown," he says, voice low but razor sharp. "They want the truth." The words echo. The whole studio seems to freeze for a second, caught in the weight of it. Then a heckler shouts something from the back and Claire, but loud enough to snap the moment. Jimmy jumps on it, standing quickly and clapping his hands. "All right, we'll take a quick break, folks," he says, laugh forced, voice too loud. The band starts playing, loud and brassy, trying to smooth it over, but Clint doesn't move. He's still staring at Jimmy. And the crowd knows this isn't over, not yet. The air in the studio crackles. The tension, the energy, it's all still hanging there, impossible to ignore. Clint Eastwood's name echoes through the studiosm, chanting it like a battle cry. Others yelling for Jimmy to push back. Jimmy stands there, forcing a smile, clapping like everything's under control, but his eyes betray him. Toward the floor producer, who's frantically motioning for a commercial cut. The cameras are still rolling, catching every second of the unraveling chaos. Clint hasn't moved. He's still seated, eyes locked on Jimmy, with that same piercing stare. It's a silent challenge, more deafening than the band, trying to cover the tension with upbeat noise. Backstage, Maggie mutters curses under her breath, glued to the monitor. She knows Clint, and she knows he's just getting started. In the control booth, the director is torn. Ratings are exploding, but the situation is clearly spinning beyond their grasp. The band begins to fade out, and Jimmy eases back into his chair. He leans toward Clint, speaking off mic, but just loud enough for the audience in the front rows to hear. "Let's just cool it, all right? We'll talk about the movie." Clint doesn't blink. "You had your chance," he replies, voice like steel, just loud enough to slice through the murmuring crowd. Phones are up, every angle captured. The moment already spreading across the internet, Jimmy's jaw tightens. He's not used to being challenged like this, especially not in his own house. He looks out at the crowd, gauging the mood, then decides to play it for laughs. "Folks, we love Clint, right?" he says, raising his hands in mock celebration. Some clap, but the applause is scattered and hesitant. The room is too divided. Clint leans back, arms crossed, unreadable. He's not here to charm anyone. He's here to deliver a message. The stage manager at the wing frantically signals Jimmy again to wrap it up. But Jimmy, pride bruised and desperation mounting, presses forward. He grabs a cue card, trying to steer back into safe territory, praising Clint's direction, asking about the cast. Clint cuts him off cold. "You're not listening," he says, silencing Jimmy mid-question. His voice isn't loud, but it carries. The studio falls quiet. "This isn't about the movie anymore. This is about you thinking you can turn me into a prop for your show." Gasps ripple through the room. Someone yells, "Tell him, Clint." Others boo, the divide growing sharper by the second. Jimmy's smile has vanished. His face is flushed now. He's been in tough interviews before, but this is Clint Eastwood calling him out in front of a live national audience. He tries to laugh it off. It comes out shaky. "Come on, man. It's just TV," Jimmy says, holding up his hands like a plea. "We're all here to have a good time." Clint shakes his head slowly. "Not me," he says, voice steady. "I came to talk about something that matters. You turned it into a circus." The words land like a gut punch. The audience erupts, some cheering, some booing, the noise swallowing the stage. The tension isn't just thick, now it's combustible. In the wings, Maggie watches with grim satisfaction. She's seen Clint dismantle bigger egos than Jimmy's. She knew this was coming. Finally, the director calls it commercial. The screens switch to ads. The band stops, and the house lights dip slightly, signaling a break. But Clint doesn't move. He sits like a statue, solid, unmoved, carved from pure defiance. Jimmy whispers something sharp to the floor producer. He's pacing now, visibly agitated, gestures tight and clipped. The audience remains restless. Security begins edging toward the stage. Two big men in black eyes on Clint, but they hesitate. Everyone knows who they're dealing with. Maggie sees them and steps forward, grabbing the stage manager's arm. "Don't even think about touching him," she says, voice low, calm but lethal. The stage manager backs off without a word. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, producers are in a huddle, voices raised, talking over each other, scrambling for a way to salvage the rest of the show. Jimmy's still pacing near his desk, running a hand through his hair, muttering under his breath. He knows he's losing, and worse, he doesn't know how to stop it. Clint, meanwhile, sits quietly, calm, sipping water handed to him by a stagehand. His eyes scanning the audience, reading the room like a seasoned gunfighter sizing up a saloon. A few fans in the front row lean forward, eyes wide, phones raised. One yells out, "You're the man, Clint!" And for the first time all night, Clint gives the faintest smile. Not for Jimmy, not for the cameras, but for the people who still get it. He gives a subtle nod, barely perceptible, but enough. The break is nearly over, and the director's call is final. Clint stays, but now Jimmy has to take back the reins. The cameras start rolling. The band kicks in, upbeat and loud, trying to reset the mood. Jimmy forces himself back into his chair, his face composed into a mask of late-night professionalism. But under the lights, his eyes betray tension. He knows Clint's not done, and he's not here to play nice. The studio lights blaze to full. The band fades out. The audience settles. There murmurs a tight undercurrent of anticipation. Everyone's leaning forward now. Jimmy slides into place, smile tight, posture rigid like a fighter, stepping back into the ring after taking a hit he didn't see coming. Across from him, Clint hasn't moved an inch. Still his stare. Locked somewhere past Jimmy's ass. If the host is just background noise to something far more serious, the crowd's energy is jagged, fractured, some still chanting Clint's name, others hoping Jimmy can land a comeback. Backstage, Maggie watches through the monitor, arms crossed, her face a cocktail of pride and dread. The control room is chaos. The director's voice crackles through every headset. "Keep it tight, Jimmy. You need to take control." Jimmy leans forward, clapping once to cut through the static. "We're back with the one and only Clint Eastwood," he says, voice lighter than before, trying to recapture the old rhythm. He pivots into a safer questions, something about the film's cinematography. He wants to ground the moment in craft, avoid the landmines. Clint plays along briefly, his voice calm, measured. He talks about using the land as a character, painting in stark visuals. But then, without warning, he veers. You know what's wrong with places like this, he says, gesturing at the polished set. They think it's all about noise, flash, applause. But somewhere along the way, you forgot what's real. The audience murmurs, half clapping, half shifting uncomfortably. Jimmy's smile falters for a second. He nods, forcing another chuckle. Fair enough, Jimmy says, reclining slightly. But hey, this is entertainment. People come here for a show, right? He gestures to the audience. A few cheer, others boo. The tension rises again. Clint doesn't blink. They come here for honesty, he replies, voice low but cutting. Not some polished lie you sell them just to keep them clapping. The words hit like a slap. The studio erupts, some standing and cheering, others jeering. The divide is real. Jimmy's fingers twitch on the edge of the desk. He's losing the room, and he knows it. The floor producer signals change the subject. Now, but Jimmy's pride kicks in. He straightens, leans in. Look, Clint, he says, tone sharper. You're a legend. No one's denying that. But you're on my stage, and we've got a show to do. The challenge is unmistakable. The crowd feels it, their volume spiking. Clint narrows his eyes, just a fraction, but it shifts the room like a wind through dry brush. Your stage, he says, voice like gravel. I'm here because I chose to be, not to dance for you. That does it. The audience explodes. Half the room chants Clint's name. The other half yells over them. The tension is volcanic now. Backstage, Maggie mutters to no one. Here we go. Security edges closer. Their hands twitch near earpieces and radios, but they stay back. No one wants the headline, Eastwood removed by force. Jimmy's done playing nice. He stands a rare move for a host and points at Clint. You want to talk about respect? He says, voice rising. Then how about respecting the people who invited you here? The mask is off. His tone is sharp, furious. The crowd roars, the noise swallowing every inch of the studio. Clint rises, slow and deliberate. His presence alone silences a section of the audience. He towers beside Jimmy, not loud but commanding. Respect, he says, stepping forward, is earned, not bought with lights and applause. The line lands like a hammer. The crowd goes into chaos. Cheers, boos, a tidal wave of noise. The studio shakes with it. The director screams over the comms. Cut to commercial. Cut now, but the cameras are still rolling. No one dares stop. This is no longer the Jimmy Kimmel Show. This is Clint Eastwood's reckoning, and America is watching. Maggie's eyes are locked on Clint, her expression taut with intensity, ready to intervene if things spiral further. At the edge of the stage, the two security guards glance at each other, uncertain how to handle a living legend who clearly isn't taking orders. Jimmy breaks the standoff first. He steps back and forces a laugh, though it lands more like a dry cough. All right, Clint, you've made your point, he says, voice tight as he tries to wrest back control. He turns to the audience, grasping for some kind of rallying energy. Let's give it up for Clint Eastwood, folks. A few clap, but it's lost in a sea of shouts, some cheers, some jeers. The room is too charged, too divided to settle. Clint doesn't react. His gaze stays locked on Jimmy, unmoving, unreadable as if, still deciding whether to say more. From the wings, the floor producer wipes sweat from his brow and gives the order under his breath. Get him off now. Security hesitates, but one of the guards finally steps forward, his hand cautiously raised. Sir, let's take a walk, he says, calm, measured, respectful. Clint slowly turns his eyes on him, and in that moment, everything stills. Don't. Clint says, it isn't a threat, it's a command. Low final, the guard freezes, hands up. He backs off without another word. Maggie bursts through the wings, her voice sharp and unflinching. He leaves when he's ready. She snaps, staring, daggers at the producer. But Clint lifts a hand, stopping her. He looks out at the audience, then back at Jimmy. His face unreadable, his voice steady. I said what I came to say, he announces, loud enough for all to hear. That's it. Then he turns without drama, without a glance. walks off stage, each step slow, deliberate. The crowd explodes behind him, cheers, gasps, and stunned silence mixing into a chaotic roar. Jimmy is left alone under the lights. The band scrambles, fumbling into some generic tune to fill the vacuum. Jimmy forces a smile, trying to salvage the moment. "Well, that was something, huh?" he says, voice cracking as he attempts to spin it into a joke. A few laughs, uneven, hollow. The studio's energy fractured beyond repair. Backstage, it's pandemonium. The director barks into a headset about damage control and PR fallout. Meanwhile, Maggie trails Clint down the hallway to the green room. He moves calmly, like none of it touched him. She watches him grab his coat. "Told them not to push you," she mutters. Clint just nods, his eyes already distant, focused on something far beyond the studio walls. Outside, the internet is already on fire. Clips of the confrontation are going viral. Headlines blare, comment sections fill. Some hail Clint as a truth-teller, others accuse him of being out of line, but no one's ignoring it. Back inside, the show limps toward its end. Jimmy stumbles through the next segment, his trademark charm noticeably shaken. Nothing else tonight matters. Clint's exit is the story already being dissected, debated, immortalized. It wasn't just a walk-off, it was a line drawn, a refusal to play the game, a moment that split the room and reminded Hollywood just how real a legend could be. As Clint steps into the night, the studio buzzing in his wake, one thing is certain, he didn't just leave a stage, he left a statement. If this story hit you like it hit the internet, don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment. Was Clint right to stand his ground, or did he cross a line? Let's talk about it. Stay curious, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.